Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone, depending on where you are. I hope you're all well and healthy and hanging in there in these difficult times. Let's crack on with today's fantastic panel. My name is Sergio Lara Bercial, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's Erasmus Day event presented by iCoachKids. Thank you for making the time to join us. Today, our expert panel are going to explore the impact of COVID-19 on youth sport. With me on the panel, we have Michael McGeehan, Milena Muldisova, Robin Russell, and Peter Vantale. Before we get going, though, please let me take you through some basic family rules, as you can see on the slide, so we can make sure that everybody has the best possible experience during the webinar. Please keep your cameras and microphones off at all times so we can focus on the speakers. Please submit questions on the chat as we go through, and I will try and post those to the panelists as we go through the webinar. Please, we don't have to agree with everybody's views, so feel free to disagree, but let's do that in a respectful way. And by all means, please feel free to post things on social media. If you can tag us, that would be great. Let me also explain how the webinar is how the panel is gonna work. We will start with some introductions, and then we will explore a range of issues related to the COVID-19 crisis and the impact on youth sport from the perspective of multiple nations and federations. So let me introduce the speakers, okay? I'm gonna stop sharing now so you can start seeing these wonderful people. Okay, so first I'd like to introduce Michael McGeehan. Michael is Director of Sport Ireland Coaching, which is responsible for overseeing and quality assuring coach development across all sports in Ireland. He joined Sport Ireland Coaching as a director in April 2007 and led the development of the coaching strategy for Ireland in 2008. A physical education graduate from the University of Limerick, Michael also had a successful career as an army officer in the Irish Defence Forces, and is also a vastly experienced Gaelic football coach and having coached a number of senior inter-county and club football teams. Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining us. Next, we have Milena Muldisova. Milena is a passionate basketball citizen, a former basketball pro player, and now a coach of many years because she started coaching when she was still a player. Nowadays, she works for the Czech Basketball Federation as the head coach of the youth department. She has been part of lots of educational projects led by FIBA, the International Basketball Federation, and her experience as a teacher and a coach helps her to create and adjust the methodology of youth basketball, especially mini basketball and baby basket in the Czech Republic. Hi, Milena. Thank you for being with us today.
Hello, everybody.
Next, we have Robin Russell. Robin is qualified as a teacher before joining the English FA. In 1996, he was responsible for the introduction of the UEFA coach education courses in England. And from 1997, he was technical coordinator responsible for the creation of the FA Coaches Association, the introduction of mini soccer, FA Learning Limited. And Robin is also a UEFA football development consultant and has also started his own consultancy business, Sports Path.
Hello.
Hi, Robin. There you go.
Hello.
Sorry,
Hello.
I couldn't find you. And last but certainly not least, we have Peter Vantale. As head of the development department of the Dutch Volleyball Federation, Peter Vantale is responsible for all grassroots and educational programs for clubs, coaches, referees, and for the development of new concepts and side events programs in the Netherlands. He is the initiator and coordinator of a long-term collaboration between the Dutch and the Nepali Volleyball Federation since 2017, and the founder of the International Volleyball for Life Girls Empowerment Program. Peter, welcome. Thank you so much.
Yes, nice to meet you. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. So here we go. We've got Milena, Robin, Michael, and Peter to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on youth sport, a really important topic. I'm sure you all agree with us. Now, I'm going to start with a very open question, and I'm going to point at Peter first. Okay, but Peter, what's been the impact so far in not only in Dutch volleyball, but in Dutch sport altogether?
Yeah, well, it's huge. The impact is huge. At first, everybody thought, well, maybe this will go away, but then we had a lockdown, and since then, we have seen that the impact on sports is really tremendous. have seen sports participation for children decreased from 85% of the population to 35% of the population. So we lost a lot of kids on the way, and and we saw the adults switching from team sport to individual sports. But the impact is huge on clubs, volunteers, federations, and the participants, for sure.
Yeah, definitely not a pretty picture. Milena, how has it been in the Czech Republic? What's the impact been?
Well, that's the same. It's really huge, and especially huge because we just started the second lockdown. And I think that the biggest fear that we have is from the repeated lockdowns. So ball sport in general is definitely impacted a lot. All the clubs, kids, but also the families that I have to mention. And doesn't matter if it's the team sport or individual sport. But it's true that the individual sport, especially outside sport, it's a little easier for them because at least they can go outside with 5 people. For the indoor sport is little worse, but I always see some opportunities, and I believe that we will talk about them a little later.
Thank you, Milena. Thank you. Yeah, that's some really important points there, really around it's not affecting everybody the same way or all kinds of sport in the same way. So that's important to consider. I'm going to come to Michael now. I'm Michael from a national perspective, as you work for an overarching national organization. What's been happening in Ireland really? What's been the impact so far?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's across a couple of fronts. The 12th of March was when the initial national lockdown was called. So I suppose from March to May, we had lockdown, we had no sport, everything just ground to a halt. Then around May, the restrictions started to be eased a little bit. And in relation to sport, individual sports were the first to gear up again for activity. That was followed on then by team sports. So during the summer, we did get some youth competitions up and running and completed. And we also got a number of the federations or governing bodies of sport who ran summer camps. Obviously, these were summer camps for children, not with the usual numbers that they had, but with restricted numbers and with social distancing and whatnot and everything else involved in that. Then around September, the rise or incidence of COVID began to increase again. And we had a number of geographical lockdowns around the country, not a national one. So that impacted again, obviously, on competitions, on the number of you could take to training. So way back in March or May, it was around 4, went up to 15, and then increased slightly over the summer. Now it's back down again. And just today, the medical advisors from an Irish national perspective are looking to go to a level 5 lockdown, which is a top level lockdown again. So that's going to have an impact again on sport, but we have to wait to see what that decision is.
And that is something that we want to discuss at some point as well, the implications of the second lockdowns, because it seems like we're all inevitably going in that direction across Europe at least. Thanks, Michael. I'm going to come to Robin as well. And Robin, I want you to get us going really. Obviously, the impact is felt across different levels. So from national organizations to federations to clubs to the children themselves, to the parents. But I know, Robin, you conducted a survey specifically in football. Yep. To look at the impact of the crisis in clubs. Yep. So could you take us to the top line findings of that survey?
Sure. Thanks very much, Sergio. Thanks for the opportunity. I surveyed about 200 of my colleagues or contacts that I knew in areas that I work, which is in UEFA, in the Asian Federation, and in the USA. And I asked them about what did they think the trends were going to be once the lockdown, if you like, had eased. Obviously, it does differ from country to country. And as you said, and as Michael's just said, there's reoccurrence. The major trends, every club, every national association now has a much greater emphasis on health and hygiene. And as one brand said, that every brand now is a health and hygiene brand, so that the associations and clubs have to prioritize health and hygiene. Major aspects, participation in football will be a lot more local. It will be a lot more, it will be increasingly low cost. In Europe and Asia, that's not necessarily the case, but as some may know, in America, that can be quite expensive. So low cost, local, much more evidence of clubs amalgamating, some clubs going out of business. An estimation of, in America, 10 to 15% of youth soccer clubs are going out of business, but lots amalgamation of clubs, and indeed something maybe we'll get on to talk about, where clubs are amalgamating with across sports. So an expected reduction, an actual reduction in clubs, but it's also an opportunity, I think, and hopefully we'll get on to look at that to reset and reimagine a lot of youth sport. But the initial aspects are those particular factors I mentioned.
Thanks, Robin. Really interesting, and we'll explore some of those as we go through the panel. I mean, it's really interesting because obviously the impact is so broad and at so many levels, and I don't think we ever anticipated it. But I'm going to go back to Peter, really. Peter, you mentioned the participation had gone down from 85% to 35%. Was that across all sports?
Yeah, that's across all sports, yeah.
And then you also mentioned that the number of volunteers and coaches has also gone down.
Well, not exactly the number, but I see that they face a lot of difficulties with all the protocols they have to follow. And now in the second lockdown, we are also in the second lockdown. They faced again new protocols and new restrictions, so they get tired.
Yeah,
this is just, they have to do so many things extra, and so normally they organize their activities and that's it. And now they have to focus on so many extra things. So we see them getting tired of all of this, like everybody, I think.
Yeah.
So that's a big concern for us also. Yeah.
How has that played about in the other countries, really? What's the impact on coaches been from your perspective? Who wants to come in on this? Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I suppose from my point of view, it certainly focused the minds of a lot of the governing bodies of sport, and in turn coaches who are involved in clubs. So for example, the use of technology, something that was spoken about for a long time, but people didn't really get around to it. But it fast-tracked the governing body's use of technology to put in coaching webinars, bringing in guest speakers, educating coaches on the ground. Then that manifests itself at club level, with club coaches getting involved in trying to engage with the kids that they had in their clubs. So they were putting together sessions that could be done at home, having Zoom competitions on different skills challenges. So people got really very innovative with it. And from a coach education point of view, I suppose, we were involved a lot in coach developer work. And we run a coach developer course every year, which is over 5 weekends and involves a lot of face-to-face interaction. We've moved that online now. So how we did that obviously proved a challenge, but it's something that we had planned to do, but which we've done now, and we're in the execution phase of it. So that's a plus that's come out of the whole crisis, I would say.
And that's interesting, really, because is that double-sided coin, right? On the one hand, there are obviously negative implications of the crisis, but at the same time, we're seeing some cracking ideas and new solutions that solutions that are not only here because of the pandemic, but hopefully things that will stay after the pandemic, because they've been proven to be good things to do, really, around technology, for example, or around the ways we engage with our children or their parents. Milena, I know you did some initiatives really to support this kind of engagement, and that included some technology as well. I don't know if you want to take us through some of that.
Technology, well, frankly, Czech people are a little behind with the technology using. So it's really a challenge, as Michael said, and we like challenges. Why not? We really need to improve. We really need the development of the coaches in this area. That's why actually we are trying to get the coaches through some projects, but also we are trying to be focused on kids as well. So it means the project in the first lockdown, for example, it was called Basketball Never Stops. We did so many videos that actually took the kids to the funny drills, to some drills that they will like, and they will keep them active and so on. But also it was the inspiration for the coaches, how to work on with the individualization, for example, how to make it funny, not just drilling, how to have the game-like approach, and so on and so on. But as I'm talking also on behalf of FIBA, I would love to say that actually with the coaches, that's great that the FIBA settled the platform where all the federations could share the ideas, where they could actually share the projects that they do for the coaches, for the kids, for parents, for all the stakeholders. So I think that the sharing is the key point that we have to emphasize on right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's again another big element of another big positive of the situation we're going through, where I think we've all become a lot more inclined to share and to learn from each other. I don't know if you would agree with that, but Peter, Robin, what examples have you seen either in the Netherlands or in the world of football in terms of how people have tried to manage the crisis? Either of you two, who wants to go first?
Okay, I mean, the point was made that one of the aspects of the survey was that they felt it was be harder to recruit volunteers, not least of which the volunteers they've got more and more commitments. Certainly older volunteers may be a little bit more reluctant in terms of shielding themselves. The use of digital, yeah, but digital in a just-in-time way, not necessarily formal courses, but snippets, bite-size e-learning. Perhaps you would know, Sergio, of some international e-learning courses that might be useful for coaches. I don't know, maybe in different languages, but definitely,
we might have an idea.
Yeah, but definitely bite-size education for volunteers. But the overall aspect that has come through is that the content has changed, and the content of the program, it's a lot more flexible. There's a lot more free play, thank goodness. Much shorter seasons, much more use of festivals, one-day festivals, because the point you made about if in terms of a second spike or a third spike, having to plan long seasons over 20, 30 weeks is unrealistic. So short festivals, flexible formats, a lot more free play, and as such, what does the coach need to do to engage with kids in that particular way? And I don't think it's necessarily formal coaching, courses. Yeah,
and that's really interesting, because I think, and Milena mentioned it as well, that it seems like because of the crisis, we've actually done what we should have done all along, which is focus a lot more on the needs of the children, because of the crisis, really, and because of the current situation. And that's again something that I hope is here to stay, and I will come back to that in a second. Peter, what's the situation been in the Netherlands in terms of what strategies either at local or national level have been put in place, or at the federation level to support people through the crisis?
We also see that there is more need for flexibility. So federations are organizing shorter competitions, not in tournament style because tournaments are not allowed, but short competitions that makes flexible. We also see that like team sports from indoor team sports, they go outside. If they are not allowed to play inside, they go outside. And that is also requesting a lot from the coaches who are not used to doing anything outside. So how do I play volleyball on the grass like that? So we had also a lot of e-learning and coaches courses online for them. And so I see a lot of innovation at club level and also at federational level. So I think it's not only bad what's happening. We can learn from it. And especially the blended learning, I think it will have a big growth.
Have you so obviously a lot of people have been doing like ourselves, for example, we've been doing the webinars to try and get people going or keep people going, but also we realized that actually we can carry on doing this regardless of COVID. From all these solutions and strategies you've seen, which ones do you think, guys, are the ones that are here to stay the most? I mean, you've mentioned a few, but I'm keen to go around the four of you. What's here to stay? What was a fad or something fashionable for now? What's here to stay, you think? Anybody, just put your hand up, or come on, Milena.
Okay, I will try to be short, but frankly, I think that we all should go back to the sport, and it's here right now. We are individualizing. In some countries where you can actually have the practices, at least with the social distance, you are using small-sided games, working with small groups, and you are putting more free play to the practices and so on. And this is actually what I think that we need to definitely keep in our sport. And going back to the main motivation of the sport, which is socializing, which is having fun, which is just love the game. So I would love that we will go back to the ground, some kind, in the basketball terminology, step back, not just the competition.
Back to basics, right? Yeah. Any additions from any of the other panelists? What's here? Robin, go ahead.
I think the trends are already, well, first of all, I think you mentioned it, much more digital engagement between clubs and parents. And I think parents have expected this, and they would expect to be informed a lot more. So clubs who don't engage or hadn't engaged previously significantly will have got to get up to speed. I think that the evidence is that the size of the clubs will get bigger, so there'll be fewer but bigger clubs, and the range of activities that they do in those clubs will extend. So there will be, yes, small-sided games, but much more free play, hopefully some walking football for veterans. The growth in girls football still, and girls sport is still developing. So single-sex clubs, I don't see that they're, in terms of the long-term future. I would think that if there are any, they have to be much more, both genders. But so bigger clubs, digital engagement, and a variety of activities, I think would be definitely that will be a watershed.
Michael, anything? Oh, sorry, Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, well, what I think also has shown, this situation also has shown the importance of the social aspect of clubs. People are eager to meet other people, and they do it at a club. And so, especially locally, the clubs have a very important social role they play. And so people need to meet each other somewhere. And I think that in policies and government, that the government also will see and also acknowledge that clubs have this role. And I hope they will put their words into policy also for that.
And that's an interesting point, because at the beginning of lockdown, all governments were really playing the card of because it was also summertime, so people go outside, and that's what you need, and how important sport was, or this kind of physical activity gurus online doing these, multi sessions for thousands of people, and how governments really emphasize the value of sport. But I wonder if they will actually put their money where their mouth is and support sport that way. Michael, I'm going to come back to you on this one, and without putting you in trouble really, but how is the Irish government supporting sport at this point?
Yeah, well, we just, it's timely that you asked me that question. We had our budget on Tuesday. So an additional, I think, 36 million has been invested by the government on top of the investment they have already. Wow. So they see the value of sport. They see how important sport is for people to take them through this COVID crisis, obviously from a physical activity point of view and a mental health point of view. So that's very welcome. That's a lot of that has already been earmarked for different initiatives. We're involved in a lot of things from mental health for coaches, women in sport programs, disability programs, as well as the normal participation programs as well. So from an Irish perspective, it's a huge step forward with that investment. Just coming back, I don't mean to go back too far on something you said, just to echo what Robin said in his findings, or you're saying about the technology piece. I'd like to see, national level, that the governing bodies continue what they're doing in the development of, say, webinars. We have some great initiatives on Instagram where a sport or a coach from a sport would take over Instagram for a day, and you follow that coach through their day, or you follow that athlete through their day. You've also, different skills activities that I already mentioned. But then at local level, the clubs gear up. Some are better than others at engaging with their underage players, and that they put some sort of framework in place to continue that.
Fantastic. And I mean, how important it is, social media really regularly, but even more so now. We need to really go down that road. Robin, over to you.
Yeah, I just thought, as Michael, that looking at some countries, that one of the most interesting is Iceland, in so much that 10, 15 years ago, they had a real problem in terms of the youngsters, in terms of alcohol abuse and drinking and crime. And so the government had a really big campaign with the sporting bodies to get more and more youngsters, particularly teenagers, involved in football. And their view was that they went the other way, and they provided tax incentives for individuals if the kids went to an accredited sports club, then the family or the parents got between 300 and 500 euros per year tax exemption. So, if you like, there was grant aid, but the major aspect was in terms of a marketing campaign. They're giving the tax incentives for kids, for the parents to go in there, and the results have been phenomenal. I mean, we do know the effect in football. Sadly, in England we do, because they knocked us out of the World Cup. But it's not just at the elite level, and it's not just in football, in handball, and I'd just be interested in other aspects of the panel. Is that sort of state strategy, is that used anywhere else in your countries?
The idea of incentives, really.
Yeah,
great question, really. Anybody?
Yeah, well, from an Irish perspective, if you're a high-performing athlete in sort of podium sports or Olympic level sports, then there is funding and grants available for those athletes. Every year, governing bodies of sports, they apply for funding as well through the government. So there's different criteria used in defining what they get. And you're looking at things like participation, number of coaching courses, and whatnot. But as regards actually giving tax relief for individuals or parents, we haven't quite gone that far. It's just a slightly different approach, and I suppose it does vary from across Europe. Sergio, as you know, and I know from various groups that we sit on, the way sport is set up in each country, certainly is different.
Yeah. Peter, Milena, any incentives for people to take part in sport in your countries?
No, in the Netherlands there are no incentives, but there is funding, like Michael said, there is funding for elite players. And also for people who don't have enough money to participate.
Yeah.
So it's also supported by the government. But there are no incentives like for tax or something like that. So
Yeah.
would be nice.
Yeah, well, I'm going to come back to this in a second after Milena. Milena, what's the picture in Czech?
Well, talking about Czech, it's really hard, and I have to give a huge credit to all the coaches and pro players, because actually there is no funding right now. During the first lockdown, at least relief of taxes or something was there, but most of the coaches are like really volunteers. And the funds are not like that because of the regions and towns. Some of them actually, they just stopped during the spring lockdown, they stopped their grants. So, and we are back in, if the clubs can stand this for the second time, for the third time, because they were counting with some grants, some funds and so on, with the clubs that are supported from government, with the talent, it's okay till December this year. But we really don't know what's gonna happen from January. So I'm really afraid. But from the FIBA side, for example, it's great that actually youth development funds from FIBA to the project, to the National Federation, they didn't stop anything, which is great actually.
Yeah, and I'm aware that FIBA really, even though the European Championships didn't take place at the age groups level, still funded all the national federations so they could continue to do activity with those groups over the lockdown. That's quite a nice gesture.
Sergio, one of the things, sorry to interrupt, one of the things that's interesting in football is that a number of associations in Europe and a couple elsewhere have initiated grassroots club accreditation programs. So there's a minimum criteria to register, but then there is a additional accreditation based on the quality, the qualifications of the coaches, the child protection checks, the governance, etc., etc., etc. And the research showed that the retention of kids in those club accredited programs is greater than one bloke trying or one woman trying to run a club. So that it's interesting that the program in Iceland, and there's a similar one in New South Wales in Australia, that they do grant, but they only grant it for clubs who reach a certain accreditation. So it's not just someone starting a club, for their kids in their street. It's an accredited club that has those minimum criteria. And I would have thought that once sport gets more organized in a way, they would have a definite manifesto, if you like, to go to government and say, look, we're doing this. Couldn't these clubs be supported? So I know in England the Charter Standard program we started 16, 17 years ago. About 70% of all football now is played in those accredited clubs where the coach needs to have a qualification and that there needs to be a criminal record check. So all I'm saying is that I think those sort of initiatives hopefully will be exacerbated as a result of COVID.
And that's a really interesting point, really, because it's not only about getting back to sport, but actually trying to build back better. I think that's one of the main messages that we keep hearing, that this is an opportunity to actually go back to a better place. Because I think it's fair to say that in some cases we've lost our way a little bit with youth sport, and we've sometimes people talk about the professionalization of youth sport in a negative way, in the sense of it's become too adult-led, and that's an interesting one, really. How do we get back a little bit? Before, I know there's a question from Dina around the incentives, but before I put that question to you, Robin, I've got still on the incentives, really. One thing that worries a lot of the people that I've talked to across different countries is the impact of COVID on coaches, on the fact that we're going to lose coaches, and for a number of reasons, really. Robin mentioned, for example, older coaches may be fearful of not wanting to be amongst other people because they want to shield and protect themselves from the virus. But I know in conversation with Milena yesterday, we talked about that. In some cases, the fear might be, I cannot dedicate time to this because I don't even know if I've got a job to go back. So I don't know, I don't have financial security to say my spare time is going to go into coaching, because I might have to be looking for another job or another way of make money. First of all, I mean, are you seeing this in your countries? And second, how do we support coaches to stay engaged, and even encourage new people into coaching? Who wants to? I know it's a really difficult question, so who wants to have a go?
Yeah, maybe I'll make a start.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, we certainly would have seen that, as you point out, that there are certain coaches who maybe have underlying health conditions, or maybe in a particular age group, and really when the restrictions were relaxed, coaches to a certain extent were at the coalface because they were out in the community and they were out engaging with the kids on the ground. And so obviously you have to respect the decision of people who maybe find themselves in a particular category, or coaches who have to withdraw and take a step back. You've also then got coaches who maybe struggle with the whole technology side of things, and they may have been coaching an individual, or they may have been coaching teams, and they struggled with that engagement. How you keep contact with your athlete who maybe has been gearing up for a competition. All of a sudden, the competition has stopped. There's a question mark over it, but the athlete or the players still have to keep training. So that's a challenge for not only the athlete, but also for the coach and how you do that. But, you know, I mentioned before about the different sports bodies who provided online learning for their coaches. And that is another plus for the COVID lockdown, in that coaches had time to breathe, to take time for themselves, because as we all know, coaches are certainly time poor, they're not time rich, and it gave them time to look at maybe where they're weak and what they could develop. So if it's technical, tactical, social, mental, whatever, it's time for them to evaluate how they lead, how they coach, how they teach, and how they play, and you know, use that opportunity well to upskill and maybe look after their own mental and physical health for a change, as well as, you know, looking after that of the athlete. So that's the plus side. And then the opposite is obviously the barriers that I mentioned. So a lot of government bodies are very good at trying to wrap around some supports to their coaches here in Ireland from the point of view of upskilling them. And, you know, in the earlier part of the year, they put on a whole suite of webinars, and again, I see the government bodies here rising to the challenge over the next couple of months up to Christmas, with a couple of webinars with world-class speakers coming in. And I think, Sergio, you're actually involved in one of the ones I was looking at there recently. So they are reaching out, not just within Ireland, but they are reaching out abroad as well to bring that expertise in.
Thanks, Michael. So important. Any of the other panelists, how do we keep coaches engaged? How do we support them? Milena, go ahead.
May I?
Yeah, please, Milena.
Yeah. I just want to add something, because I have to agree with Michael, definitely, with some webinars, technology, self-education of the coaches, for sure. But what we tried actually before the COVID time, but also now when we were open around in September, the coaches could go to the schools. We haven't been talking about schools. And I think that most of the European countries, they have a club system of the sports. But maybe the governing bodies should think about how to put the sports into schools, back to schools. We can keep the club system for the competition and so on, but we need also school sports, which is for all, which is multi-sport, which is things like that. But how we can get the coaches in there right now is as soon as the schools are open with PE lessons, which is not now in our country, they can be the ones who can lead the PE lessons, show the teachers how to, work on basketball, how to work on multi-sport, not just basketball. It's not all about basketball, but then we can keep the coaches engaged actually and on board and, having money and being paid and stuff like that. So maybe we should think about a project that are connected to the schools.
Very interesting thoughts. Peter, go ahead.
That's quite interesting. During the first wave of COVID, our elite players and coaches had nothing to do. They couldn't practice, they had no competitions, but schools were open. So what we did is we have sent them to school, and they actually gave the PE lessons outside. And of course, there was some of it was volleyball, but it was more like playing outside. And so broad motorical skills, they had attention to that. And we had 8,500 children in this program during these few months. And I think that clubs really can play a role for maybe not as a substitution for the PE lessons, but because in PE lessons you learn about how to move, right? And I think that clubs and coaches, they can teach children how to play sports, not specifically one sport, but what is the value of sports. So I see it as an extra, and but what you need for that is, I think, to professionalize your clubs. You cannot only count on volunteers in daytime, so you need to professionalize it. And we just started a project to professionalize clubs in the Netherlands. And to support coaches, so they will be available during the time that normal people are just working, have a regular job.
So Peter, how does that work? What conditions or criteria do the clubs have to meet to be able to get that government support to professionalize the club?
Yeah, actually, it's a federational support.
Okay.
So we invest in professionals, but also the clubs invest. We see that people are willing to pay for quality, and professional coaches, they are not the ones actually giving the lessons. They are supporting the voluntary coaches. They are teaching them. So coaching on the job, it's actually like coaching on the job, but they are also available to visit the schools during daytime. So if they are paid, if it's their job, then we can do so much more.
Right, because I know, Michael, for example, in Ireland, you had a couple of big programs with Gaelic football and the Irish Football Association sending coaches into schools, right?
That's right. Yeah, there's money invested every year around the country for games promotion officers. So these are development officers, say from the GAA, which is probably the biggest sport organization in the country, development officers from soccer, rugby, boxing, and some other sports as well. And they're scheduled into the primary school curriculum or timetable, and they go in for, I think it's, and I stand to be corrected on this, they go in for blocks of 6 weeks at a time, and they take various classes for half an hour or an hour, depending on the timetable. And they introduce the kids in primary school to the fundamentals, basically, of movement. Okay, there's a little bit of the sport specific in it, but it's mostly fundamentals, running, jumping, catching, and all those locomotor skills. So that works relatively well. I suppose it's maybe better funded in some areas of the country than it is in others. And I see Simon here as well from Sport NI, and they have a similar program running in Northern Ireland as well with the big three sports. So shouldn't replace PE in the school, but it's an add-on, and it's certainly, I know from feedback that we would have received from teachers, it's certainly very welcome.
And interestingly, really, and we've been having this discussion for a few years now. It seems like lately in most countries, physical education is being kind of pushed back in the curriculum and paid less attention than some of the what tend to be called actually the core subjects. Do you feel that through the situation that we're currently in, that's going to strengthen the case for both physical education and sport in schools? Can you feel that, or you're not sure?
Well, I know from an Irish perspective, maybe that's two different questions. One is sport and one is the PE. And certainly, again, it would vary from country to country. And maybe in Irish context, there's contractual issues around now taking teams after school hours and for competitions. But as regards PE, I know from an Irish perspective, PE now has just become a subject for the Leaving Cert, which is the exam that you need to get into university. So probably bad timing in that this is the first year of that, where there's an assessment involved in it. So kids who are traditionally good at sport now can hopefully build on that by taking the course as one of their subjects for the Leaving Cert.
Thanks, Michael. Peter, were you going to make a comment before Michael came in around the situation, the link between school and sport?
Well, I see there's a lot more attention now for physical health. So I would not be surprised if there was more attention also for PE lessons in the Netherlands.
Yeah. And that takes us to Robin. You made a point on the chat around the link between sport and health, and how the National Health Service in the UK was already prescribing physical activity and sending people into gyms.
Older people, yeah. In some national and NHS regions, they will allow doctors to prescribe gym membership. That is increasingly, I believe, depending on what the priorities are in each NHS region. But just to take up the point that you raised, that my colleague in the KMVB and the German Federation would say that the average shelf life of a grassroots football coach is about 4 years. So basically, however many coaching courses they run, they're trying to fill the bath, but the plug is out, so they're losing them. And so to answer the question, yes, professionalizing, as Peter says, does not necessarily mean giving them money, but providing support for them, mentoring them, making sure that they're feeling valued and welcomed, dealing with the problems that they have, etc., etc., etc. And the realization that you go to all that trouble to try and train coaches, but if you're only going to keep them for 4 years, and basically that probably is the length of their kids, their own personal kids' involvement, then some more concern at local level, at club level, and I would see a lot more coach education being done and coach development being done by clubs using National Association tools and National Association templates and your videos and your courses, but being a lot more local to give that coach, that parent, a lot more support. And it's a lot more than just sending them on a coaching course, because the evidence is the attrition rate is so great.
Yeah, and I mean, Robin, I love you've mentioned this a couple of times. Really, the idea of we need to go local. One of the realizations of the pandemic is that local works more than national, or that combination of national strategies but really with really good local applications. I wonder if either you, Robin, or any of the other panelists, this idea of going local, how does that sit with you?
Oh,
Well, yeah, let's have a look at local. What exactly do you mean by local? If you see that the programs and the have to be run more local, or that the clubs are getting more important, I think yes. But I think we already knew that. The federation already knew that. Now, hopefully, local governments also see this. And I think that I mentioned to professionalize the clubs. I think that if you have professionals locally, you will be able more to adapt. You can organize, they are available to organize flexible activities and flexible programs. They are available to connect to other clubs. They are available to connect to schools. So I think if you mean that with local, if you mean this, I fully agree.
I think it was more about if a coach in a club wants to go on a coaching course or have some coach development, they can do it at their own club as opposed to going to a national association centre or a college or whatever. It is a lot, just like you have teaching hospitals, and a lot more teacher education now is done in school. A lot more coach education should be done in clubs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we already have local programs for that until a certain level, of course. But because you also need a certain amount of candidates for it to organize it. But yeah, I agree.
So is the role of national organizations really to try and strengthen the local delivery partners, really to support that local growth? Is that what we're looking at? Michael, you were smiling there.
Yeah, this is something that we've sort of had a lot of discussions about. If you look at a coach, and invariably the coach is a volunteer, and if a club approaches a volunteer to get involved as a coach, obviously the first questions they're going to ask is, well, how much time do I have to commit to this? How much is the course going to cost? And is there travel involved in it? And if you can cut down on any of those three things, there's a better chance that you're going to have that volunteer for the club. So I think there is a move across Europe, all right, to make it more local, to localize coach education within the club. So instead of maybe one or two coaches from one club coming to a collective session somewhere in a country, you can have maybe 12 coaches from that one club. Now that in itself then is a challenge for the sports body, for the federation or the governing body of sport, because there's a different delivery mechanism involved in that. There's also possibly an extra cost involved in that. But how you overcome that it certainly is being looked at, I know, from an Irish perspective. And just on Robin's point as well, certainly, the bulk of the coaches that you're going to get involved are going to be at that entry level. And then as they progress, that number gets smaller until they get into the high performance piece. So that struggle is constant to get volunteers into the club, and it's something that clubs have to be proactive about on an annual basis, not just every couple of years, so that they have that steady stream, in this case, of coaches that are going to be coming into the clubs. So to have that volunteer recruitment strategy in place is equally as important as having the resource then to upskill or train those coaches in their relevant sport.
Thanks, Michael. Milena, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add a little thing that we are in the process as the federation that we want to try to show the local federation or regional federations, let's say, how to work on with the education of the coaches, how to work with the camps of the kids and so on. But it's for us, it's not, the aim is not to make it huge for the whole country. For us, the aim is actually to do it regionally. That's why we settled some regional methodologists or coaches that are doing the stuff, as Robin said, for example, going systematically to the clubs, working with them, mentoring them, you know, not just give them some knowledge, give them some learning, and but also working with them for a longer period of time. But also, what is important for me is that we really need to think about that we have so many volunteers, so many moms and dads working as the coaches. You guys talked about it, but maybe these people are really great in mini basketball and baby basketball. Their aim is not to go to the higher level, and we still need to think about those people, how to give them the credit, how to support those people. And frankly, my job going to the class, we are a small country. It's possible to actually visit them, to give them some support, to give them some answers and so on. But it's not enough. We really need the support of the government and, you know, higher level. So, but we are working on it. We are on the start. It has up and downs, but we are working on it.
Thank you. Very true, Milena. And I think parents are a great resource that we have to tap into and support more often. Right. I'm conscious of time. We're coming round to an hour nearly. So I'm going to start wrapping it up. I'm just going to offer you a chance, if you want to take it, to say some final words really around, obviously, the people that are on the call and that are going to watch this webinar on YouTube will be in positions where they're watching this because they've got to try and do something about lockdown and sport in their countries or sports. So from your experience of the last few months, what's your key word of advice, really? What, if you had to pick one thing, what would you say? Who wants to take that first? Robin, go ahead.
I picked two things, two opportunities. Getting teenagers involved in sport. The evidence shows that what national associations and clubs don't do is they stop recruiting teenagers. So there's a vast number of teenagers out there. Can we get them who have not been involved in sport? Can we get them involved in the first time? It's not just 5 and 6 and 7 year olds that start. It's teenagers. And the second point, if I may, the evidence shows that the first group that drop out of sport are those late birthdays. That it's quarter 3 and quarter 4 kids that drop out of sport. Certainly football, anyway. As soon as you have registered competition, it is the quarter 3 and the quarter 4, they're the most likely to drop out. And I would think for a club or association in any sport that decided to target teenagers and also to target especially quarter 3 and quarter 4 kids, there is an opportunity there that a real big opportunity for them.
Thanks, Robin. We're actually, as part of iCoachKids Plus, our new project, we're actually doing some research into dropout and reasons for dropout. So we will come back to you with some data when we have it. Right. Any other final tips from any of the other panelists?
Yeah, I would just say that a lot of countries seem to be going into a second lockdown, ourselves included. So again, use it as an opportunity, on the one hand, for coaches to reflect and breathe and, personally develop. And then obviously for parents then as well, who will be spending a lot more time with their kids. It's an opportunity for them to play with their children, maybe use some of the online resources that are available to them, go and seek them out and try it at home. All coaches try things and they make mistakes, and they shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes and learn what works and learn what doesn't work. Parents should try and embrace that as well. But I haven't done any coach education courses. Just get online and see what simply could be done at home and try and improve some of those physical literacy skills that kids should have.
Thanks, Michael. Milena, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I would love to talk about a thing that actually Robin mentioned a little bit. Coaches, please try to think about the planning and your aims, because I can see right now with my coaches over here, the ones who were focused on winning, they don't have a motivation. Their kids don't have a motivation, but those ones who are focused on development and on other things like socialization and stuff like that, they are okay, and they are able to motivate the kids as well. So please try to think about those two things that iCoachKids is talking about it a lot. So you can find so many, you know, learning stuff and about it. But second thing to say, I would love to thank and give the biggest credit to 3-in-1. You know what is it? Coach, parent, and the teacher. We have so many of this in one person. And these people, for me, really needs a huge credit, and you are great.
Thanks, Milena. Thank you. That's really true. Peter, final words from the Netherlands.
Final words. Well, just one thing to add. Also look about the opportunities. Like if you are indoor sport coach, look at the opportunities for outdoor varieties, because we have seen an increase of beach volleyball and outdoor volleyball players. I think basketball has 3 versus 3. I think handball also has a beach handball. So there are good opportunities also, and we don't know what COVID will do. We don't know how many lockdowns or waves we will have, but so take a look already at April, May. If you can go outside, this is a great opportunity.
Thanks, Peter. Well, on those words from our 4 panelists, I'm gonna wrap up the panel. I'm gonna thank you very much, Michael, Milena, Robin, and Peter, for taking part and making time for this. Fantastic ideas and lots of great food for thought that I hope really helps the people that were watching today and that will watch it on the YouTube channel. From me, really, just a big thank you to all the people that tuned in today. But I, like Milena says, a big thank you to everybody that is keeping youth sport afloat. We know it's not easy. We know you're going through hell. We know the easy thing to do would be to quit. And you guys are just keeping all these children and young people involved and doing it for nothing. So we salute you. We thank you. And on that note, everybody, please stay safe, stay healthy, stay connected, and have a fantastic weekend. Thank you very much for tuning in today, everybody. And thank you again to the panelists. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, Sergeant.
Yeah.